Welcome to Rise from Lausanne, Switzerland, where in the past month, the 3 hotels I've been to, I have not seen a single mask, and all 3 have served breakfast buffets, to my great surprise. I am Demian Hodari, Professor of Strategic Management at EHL Lausanne.
And from lovely London in quarantine, my name is Mendiratta, and I'm delighted to be alongside Professor Hodari in a tie, which I have not seen on Rise as yet. And to all observing, a very warm Kamar Khatima Tova, and we wish you a very good fast today. We're very excited to have you with us for season 2. Delighted to have you for our 2nd live episode, but episode 3, we are continuing our journey of 2020. Kiddies are back in school, students are back in universities, Demian is back in a tie, businesses are opening up, hotels are starting to open up, the world is starting to stretch its wings. But at the same time, they're being pulled back. People are talking more and governments are more talking about working from home for the rest of the year. Students are going back into, in some cases around the world, especially in the UK, quarantine. And we're finding that there's so much we still don't know, which is why we have Rise. And we are thrilled that you are joining us with us to continue this journey to make sense of it all, separating the news from the noise, and importantly, being there to answer your questions. To that point, please do send us any questions you have during the program. We are thrilled to be able to answer them. We are here for you to help you find those answers, either through us or through people and contacts that we know. But for the moment, I'm going to hand it over to Professor Hodari. I feel like I need to announce you as that, seeing you in a tie for so long, after so long. Sir, what's on the program?
Well, first I'll explain the tie. I've actually just left my MBA class on Microsoft Teams, jumped over to Zoom to do Rise while my students are still in class with a guest lecturer, and that's hence the tie. I should have taken it off for you, Anita, but maybe later. All right, today, entrepreneurship. We thought from all the questions we got over season 1, and so many of the topics we looked at were really from larger corporate perspectives and bigger companies, but we had a lot of questions from people who had started their own businesses or wanted to start their own businesses and were curious a bit more about the small firms. So we thought we'd bring on a few entrepreneurs who have been either launching or running businesses through this difficult time to try to understand their perspective, not only on what it takes to run a company normally, but what does it take to run a company through such difficult times as today. So that's the theme for today, Anita.
Brilliant. Excellent. And now we have the fun part of going to our viewers.
Yeah, let's get our first poll up, and we'd love to hear from you an answer to this question. And let's see what people said. All right. So that hybrid method, right? Very few people are saying they just want to stay home full time. And I think the hybrid method reflects a little bit people's increasing comfort with the technology and understanding that can be used, but also maybe some of the comforts of being at home.
I think that's really interesting. And it also shows a sense of how comfortable are people getting out in the world, which means, sir, we need to get you a yellow Rise tie, because this is not going to be the first time you're Zooming from class onto Rise and back to class.
Good point. Good point. All right, well, let's see a little bit later when we talk to our guests what they think about that hybrid model and if that works for their firms as well. All right, over to you, Anita.
Stunning. Excellent. So as we always do, we look at where in the world are we? And as you've seen with season 2, we're doing equally a hybrid. We're combining where in the world are we and where's our industry. So what's happened since we were last together 2 weeks ago for Rise Live and 1 week ago for Rise in Practice? Well, as I said, I'm in quarantine. I had the great pleasure of going to the UN WTO Regional Commission meetings, Executive Council in Tbilisi in Georgia 10 days ago. And I say 10 days ago because I am 10 days and counting of my quarantine, 4 days left to go before I can actually go and enjoy some of the London sunshine at the end of summertime. What hit me most is that as much as 53% of the world's destinations are easing restrictions, we need to 100% prepare for managing expectations. Because as we've always said, Demian, it's the next normal and there's no going back to 2019 and what we knew as our travel. Going into airports, no more hugs and kisses, welcoming and goodbye. People are not allowed to now take anyone but passengers into the terminal. In the hotel elevators, even though they're only 1.25 meter wide, people need to stay 2 meters apart. Rooms have everything pretty much covered in plastic, including the television converter, but that's fine because as a woman, I hold on to it. As a man, you just keep flipping back and forth, flipping back and forth. And what hit me the most was the sadness that we are an industry of emotion, amazing emotion, and yet the smiles are being covered up with the masks. You can start to see smiles coming through eyes, but the whole principle that people are saying, but yes, you can start to see the laugh lines, that's not a good thing for women. So I think the plastic surgery industry and Botox might increase, which takes us to the next slide. And this I thought was really interesting when we look at it. Skyscanner, which is brilliant in terms of being able to map searches and actual bookings, demonstrated that from May 2020 up until January 2021, we know that hard for holiday travel is going to be keeping steady. We anticipated holidays increasing. However, take a look at the dark orange, an event, or business, the red striped. From January 21, it plummets, which is basically people saying, we don't have confidence in terms of hosting events and running business meetings, or we've become so accustomed to living virtually, do we need to anymore? This is quite significant, especially if you think of the hospitality industry and how many business and events venues are out there, hotels, specific venues themselves, that are now seeing a flatlining in 2021. Very concerning. I thought this was an interesting telling aspect of what parts of our industry are going to grow or stay steady and what simply are not going to find the oxygen in 2021. Over to you.
Thanks. I've got a couple pieces of information for people. The first one comes from our friends at STR, and as you know, I kind of regularly try to show you something that they've come up with because they really do have the best data on the hotel industry. And sadly, this one is demonstrating, there you can see that number 20 on the far left, or that number 19 on the far right side, is basically demonstrating that projects are moving from planning or final planning phases to deferred, which is on that left side, and that right, number 19, to abandoned, meaning new hotel projects which bring new supply, generate a lot of income, new jobs, new opportunities for people, new places to stay for guests. We're starting to see a large decrease in that. And of course, that's just the beginning of that. And we've been saying for several months now that a lot of the eventual repercussions of the crisis and its impact on the industry would be felt later on in the year. Sadly, we're starting to feel that here, and something to keep your eye on because without growth, we don't have a lot of new opportunities for people, especially for jobs. And our second slide, I've shown a version of this a couple times over the season one. It's just to track how some different industries are doing relative to each other and relative to the overall stock market in the US, using the S&P 500, which is that reddish line. And you can see the overall S&P has actually grown 3% from the beginning of the year. So, not a great figure, but at least we're not in negative territory anymore. But you can see there that hotel sector, gaming sector, and airlines are all largely negative, 28, and 58% for airlines, basically telling us that investors are not very optimistic or bullish on the future of these industries in the short to medium term. Restaurants seem to be performing a little bit better, more in line with the overall stock market. And I think that's largely because they've been able to generate some revenue over the past 3 months. Some are in the Northern Hemisphere, outdoor dining, and people have demonstrated that they still want to go out and eat. They may not be traveling, they can't travel perhaps, they're not taking flights, they're not staying in hotels, but they do want to go out and eat. And I think people are starting to recognize that. And the second point here is, remember, this is a stock market performance. So these are the larger chain restaurant companies that have been able to weather the storm a little bit better than the independent restaurants. And this is largely due to their scale, their ability to deliver, do larger takeaway, et cetera. So sadly, all the independent restaurants that are still closing, this is not a sign that they have it any easier, but at least some restaurants are doing well.
I must say, Demian, I love those 2 slides that you've shown because there's a common denominator that I'm seeing, which is about supply chains. As you said, when hotels and development stop, there's a whole supply chain impact of businesses that make that work. And your point about restaurants, like we found in the UK with the whole help out to eat out, it's not necessarily about the dining, it's about getting people remobilizing supply chains that feed food and beverage. So I love that you've put these 2 in because they expose we're seeing the tip of the iceberg, but what's underneath the iceberg in terms of the economy and getting the wheels of economy moving. Speaking of wheels of economy, we're going to go to our 30-second challenge. And I think this is quite fun. And the idea being, I'd like to ask you a question, and I'm going to ask it based on our first Rise in Practice, in which we had Robin Ingalls speaking about insurance and his point of view of the importance of the insurance industry going forward, because clearly that's the insurance policy, pardon the pun, for the industry to become stabilized again. What struck you the most when you saw that recorded episode and you reflect back on its value now? 30 seconds.
I think I'm probably someone who almost never ever bought travel insurance. And if I bought it, I kind of resented having to buy it, and, was wondering if I really needed to. I don't even get the car insurance when I rent a car. And I think Robin said something about this being like a grudge purchase before, but now, I think people are starting to recognize that it's not a negative issue. It's a peace of mind. We want to travel. We don't want to have worries. And as we see, there are opportunities, or there are times when we do need it. So I think it's this shift, and I'd be curious to see how people's perceptions of travel insurance changes over time, if it becomes something more normal and routine to do, or if we'll continue to see it as, something I have to do, but I really don't want to do. So I think that's what I took away from it.
Brilliant. And I must say, I like your honesty in saying originally it wasn't an issue at the beginning of season 1, that was even a consideration. But now we know it really is a facilitator to getting our world traveling again, because there's just so much uncertainty that continues.
Yeah, and I'll just add on one piece. I think it's also, we gave a lot of practical advice to people in their travels, but I think even for hotels or people in the industry to understand the role that it plays and how they can use it to, reassure their customers, even if they're not selling it or making any money from the insurance, understanding how its role is changing. I think it's going to be important for everybody, hotel managers and everybody. All right, Anita, my challenge for you. There is some discussion in the media and in academia that all the hygiene initiatives that the companies are taking, hotels, airlines, et cetera, and that they're promoting is really for show, like a theater, hygiene theater. We're doing it because we need to reassure people and make them feel better, but deep down, it doesn't do a whole lot. And there was a similar discussion about safety at airports, that some of those measures are really, taking up the shoes, the liquids really there to make people feel a little bit safer, but really deep down, we're not necessarily helping that much. And so my question for you is, what do you think about the safety and cleanliness measures right now? Are they for really helping us, or are they just there for show?
It's a great question. And I like the fact that you took it back to 9/11 as well afterwards with the liquids and the whole bit. I think importantly, there are two dimensions to this. There's industry and there's travelers as well. The industry is doing its best that it can. When you say about, as you said, promoting, that makes me nervous, because as we've discussed, no one can compete on safety. That's like airlines competing on safety. It's unethical. But to me, all of the protocols are vital because they send a message to travelers, these matter. To me, the weakest link in the chain and what is the strongest basis for potential is travelers, and getting them to recognize the individual responsibility that I don't like wearing a mask, but I wear a mask to protect you, Demian, because I know that you're older than I am. I have to protect you.
It did feel strange this weekend to be in this hotel and no one wearing a mask, buffet breakfast. You really would never know there was a pandemic going on, and I felt a little strange. I have to say, I felt a little, am I really being protected like I should be? But ultimately, I still went golfing. Okay, in the snow.
Headlines. Let's do headlines.
EU travel industry steps up quarantine pushback, right? The EU and tourism authorities and many countries trying to say, we cannot revert back to quarantine. We need to find other ways to protect our people, because it's destroying the industry, destroying livelihoods. It's going to have a long-term negative implication for people's jobs, safety, security, income, etc. And then there was this great headline from the Telegraph: 10 reasons to make quarantine-friendly Sweden your next holiday destination. Basically saying, hey, you can go to Sweden. There's no quarantine there. There's no quarantine necessarily coming back. And this may be a competitive advantage. And so I'm wondering if we can't get all the laws changed, whether those countries that are able to welcome travelers more easily and not have them go through as rigorous a process for whatever reason, what kind of advantage they're going to have. So again, countries looking for ways to attract people and to compete with each other. And if it's not on cleanliness, maybe it's on quarantine policies. And my second one, a little bit different, building back on week one, where I talked about episode one, talking about Marriott having made permanent many jobs that they had furloughed and made temporary, but now they were permanent job losses. We see Whitbread, a large operator of hotels in Premier Inn in the UK, announcing 6,000 job losses. And what I think is important is that first part of this headline, as UK furloughs near end. It is not that things have gotten worse now than they were 3 months ago, 6 months ago. It's that government policies that were there to help businesses and industries, such as paying employees their salaries so that companies would not lay them off. Well, that's ending. And it's also the same thing happening in the US with the airline industry, for example. And it's just a sign of, I think over the next 2 or 3 months, you're going to see a lot more layoffs in the industry as things have not gotten better. And as government subsidies and support has waned, just because there isn't enough money there to do so, or enough public or support to continue to maintain those industries. So not a real positive indication of the next few months in our industry, Anita.
Indeed. And I must say, I love these two headlines, Demian, because they raise so many questions about what's next. And which is why, again, we always ask our viewers, send in the questions, because we'd love to be able to hear what's on your mind and what's concerning you. Because what really concerned me with my two headlines, I think your grouch is rubbing off on me, was my first headline, which was what we saw around the world, the fact that CDC published guidelines around the concern about the fact that COVID-19 might be aerosol based, and then withdrew it. Why do I speak about this? It's all about, exactly as you say, Demian, confidence. People are not going to get back out in the world, whether it's to a local restaurant or to a country next door, if they don't have confidence in the regulations. What saddened me about this, and sad is the only word, is that CDC, like the WHO, is a globally trusted leading voice of intelligence and science around COVID-19. For CDC to publish something and then withdraw it made people question not just the credibility of the content, but what was the purpose of withdrawing? And that's what saddens me, because it goes into the next slide then, which was my second headline, which was ultimately the Grinch who stole Christmas. And that the fact that Prime Minister Johnson has announced that there's a really good chance that Christmas is going to have to be cancelled for a lot of people getting together. We know in London, Mayor Khan has already cancelled the London fireworks, which is always such a huge, iconic spectacle. And across the country and across the world, a lot of discussions are starting to take place about students being in school, not being able to go home for Christmas. So all of this feeds into the confidence and the fatigue of people being able to go forward. And my whole point of this is the fact that we're losing sight of the fact that this is a global healthcare and humanitarian crisis. This is not about politics. This is not about pleasure. And as a girlfriend of mine, a doctor in Canada who was on the front line, said, nobody ever died of boredom. But we're not a generation that's being told what not to do. We're a generation that likes being told what to do. And we like personal expression, which is why I share with you this video, which I thought was really interesting, because it demonstrates how a simple way of protecting ourselves, which we know to be true, has now become, sadly, a personal expression, not simply of our belief in healthcare, but our belief in other things that are defining our society. So I will play it for you now.
A mask can say a lot about the person who wears it. But even more about the person who doesn't.
I just thought that was really interesting from the point of view of, please, can we focus on healthcare first and work on that? Because if we don't get through this together, we won't get through it. And if we face second and third waves, Mother Nature caught us out the first time, as I've always said. But second and third waves are very much in our hands, and we need to take care of each other and make sure that we do what we know to be true. I just thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I thought it was a very powerful video, and it makes me again think back to this weekend in the hotel and no mask. And when we asked, would it be to wear a mask? They're like, no, of course not. It's just that part of Switzerland is not requiring it. They have very low cases and they haven't found the need to it. So, then you're coming from an area which is a lot of infections, Switzerland, Vaud, especially Lausanne, and the different views, and you don't want to get into a political discussion. And I almost felt uncomfortable to wear a mask since nobody else was. Almost the peer pressure not to wear one, what was there, and it's a complicated issue. It's a complicated issue.
And
but
I was thinking as well. As I said, I don't like wearing a mask. I wear the mask. Granted, it's black. I wear the mask because my point of view is the sooner I wear the mask, or the longer I wear the mask, the sooner I can take it off. So let's just get through this and make sure we're all safe in it. So there we are. And now we get on to an exciting part.
Before we bring on our guests, we always like to have our second poll as a discussion point with them. So I think you'll find this one interesting. If we could get you to take 30 seconds to answer the following question, please. All right, Anita. Money, job security, no idea. There's a little bit of everything, and still a good third of our audience are entrepreneurial, which I think reflects a statistic I saw the other day about 1/4 of people that have been let. 1/4 of people that have started a business recently had never done it before, and I'm just curious if that's also the case with our people. But you know, people have different reasons.
Stunning.
All right, let's bring in our guests and see what they have to say about that. We've got two pretty remarkable gentlemen, both graduates of EHL, although luckily for them, or probably because of this, I was never their professor, which again is probably why they're both having some decent amount of success in their industries. We've got Florian and there's Patrick. And I'm going to start with Patrick there. And if Patrick, you could just give everybody like a 30-second background on you and on Simply Jets, because not everybody knows your company.
Sure. Basically, as you mentioned, I'm a graduate from École Hôtelière de Lausanne in 2014, so it's been a while now. And during my last year at DHL, we started the idea of Simply Jet with two friends. And this is from there that we started working on it. And basically what we do is that we are a charter broker. So we are the link in the industry between private jet owners and operators and the clients who want to fly on them.
Okay, great. So you're distributing the product to the customer rather than actually being you have no planes yourselves.
That's correct, exactly.
Right. Okay, great. And Florian, a little bit about Hotel Hero, about yourself, and a little bit about Hotel Hero.
Yeah, thank you for first of all, Demian. Thank you, Anita, for having us or having me. Myself, I'm also a graduate from EHL. As you mentioned, I graduated 2017, and during our final year, also after our second internship, actually two other EHL alumni and myself, we got together and we wanted to solve the problem of the digitalization, especially with independent hotels, and seeing, you know, how can we help them to, you know, find their way throughout the chaos. And yeah, over the last few years, we have built on the one side a technology platform where hotels can discover, evaluate, and manage their software, and we are building a chain solution. So really helping more hotel chains to manage everything which is related to their contracts, licenses, costs, etc.
Okay, great. And I'll just ask you about that poll. You know, you saw there was a variety of reasons why people have not gone entrepreneurial, but almost a third of our audience are being entrepreneurial at this time. And I'm curious, what would you say was the number one thing that was keeping you from doing what you eventually did do? What was the thing you had to overcome when you took the plunge to start your business? I'll start with you, Florian.
What was the point that we had to overcome? I think we came out of EHL, and to be honest, we didn't have so much technology know-how, but we knew already that we were more digitally native, so we had already more know-how than many hoteliers. And then we had great mentorship, especially from, for example, Ian Miller at EHL, who was there from day one, helping us to guide us to understand what are the problems which we need to solve and answer that ourselves. So then we really just went step by step. We took first 3 months out of EHL. I first went to work at the car, and then kind of, okay, can we solve these certain questions? What is the market feedback? And then we really went from small goals to be able to see, okay, is it worth it to start a company out of this? Or is this more a project where we say, this is an interesting area, but maybe we should find a job? And then at some point it triggered that we, you know, the feedback was good. We had some first clients who wanted to pay and have us more as consultants at the beginning. And then it was just an evolution from there on.
Okay, good. And Patrick, for you guys, was there one thing that was really keeping you from doing this that you said, okay, we're going to overcome that?
I think for us, it was mainly that we were really into it from the start, but the main realization we had is during our last year, we thought we were going to start right after EHL, but by the end, we realized that we invested all our money in our studies, and we actually had to take some time to work on our own, and we each took a year to a year and a half. You know, it also helped us a lot to make the project come to fruition, really having the time to work on it and being sure that it was something that would be useful in the industry. And until now, it's been working pretty fine.
Good. It sounds a little bit like having patience for both of you and letting things materialize, and then the money issue. Anita?
Brilliant. Yes, please. I must say, I love the fact that you're both on and you're sitting there very poised, looking very relaxed. But the fact remains that being an entrepreneur, adrenaline is part of the DNA, and risk mitigation and managing that. I'm curious because I started my business 18 years ago, and the best advice I got was from a friend of mine who was a lifetime entrepreneur from a very young age, who called me for 2 hours, and he said to me, I'll never forget, he said, you will fail repeatedly in the first 2 years. You will fail over and over and over again. Get ready for that. Again, you sit back and entrepreneurship has become quite sexy, and it's quite, as they say, it takes a lifetime to be an overnight success. What is the best realistic advice you both received when you decided to go away from the corporate path and trust your idea that you knew had something in it? I'm going to say Patrick first, only because I'm aviation biased.
Sure. It was very concrete, actually. It just came in the form of, you know, because of course, we had a lot of doubts, even with all the work you put in before and the feasibility studies and everything. You think that it's going to work out, but of course, there's a lot of doubts, and you're putting your life into it. And it was pretty simple that somebody told me, you know what, just do it. Go ahead, start your business. Of course, there's a chance you're going to fail, but you're young. You've taken some time to start your business. You have some savings aside. You have everything you need. Just go ahead, do it. If it doesn't work, you lost maybe a year, 2 years of your life. If it does, then all good for you. And that's how we went for it.
Brilliant. Florian?
Yeah, I think that, of course, is a great piece of advice, just starting doing things. But I think on our side, it was really listen to your customers, talk to your potential customers. Don't just try to push through the hypotheses which you've set up and you think this is the problem and this is how we're going to solve it. But be open to fail, be open to be agile, to adapt and take new situations into account. And yeah, so I think this is, especially as you mentioned, the first 2 years, it's not just about, you know, failing. Of course, everybody will fail or things will show out as if they're a bit different, but then it's how do you approach these problems? How do you approach the situation and what do you learn out of it? And so I think that was the biggest feedback for us, is really always be open to adapt to new situations.
It's so good to get your honest answers to these questions. And that's why, again, to all of our viewers, please take advantage of Patrick and Florian being here, because this is the litmus test of character and credibility. Demian, over to you.
Yeah, let's talk a little bit about your company during the past 6 months. So in March, the world more or less locked down and impacted every business. Give me a real quick recap on how it impacted your business right away, and how have you had to pivot, shift, not shift? I mean, what have you had to do as a response over the past 6 months? And then we'll look at how that felt. But give us a understanding. And let's start with Florian this time.
Yeah, for us, it was actually quite a big hit, and we were hit quite direct. Just ITB Berlin was the first major travel event which was cancelled in March, and it was cancelled a couple days earlier. And for us, we were really planning on presenting our new chain solution there. We had a lot of customers or potential customers where we had meetings set up for ITB. Until a week before, new meetings were coming in and everything was like, okay, what's Corona? That's something, it's not going to impact us. And then, yeah, from one day to another, all the chains were, you know, the people were furloughed, the budgets were cut. Everybody was like, okay, let's take a step back. In a month or two, we'll talk again. And then, yeah, as we know, even today, the situation has not really improved. I think even in the German markets, the feeling of the market is even worse now than 3 months ago. But for us, this meant, okay, we need to adapt. You know, we had our marketplace where hotels can find new solutions. This was thriving, but our new key product, which we wanted to monetize and grow with, was suddenly, you know, there was no more demand for it. So we then saw, okay, how can we use that and make a solution which helps in there's no furloughing the owner of an independent property. So how can we support them in this situation? And then we also brought out new activities with software vendors, for example, bringing out assistance packages so that hotels can try out new tech and for free or for 6 months for free. Because at that time we all thought, you know, Corona is going to take 3 to 6 months. And we pushed, especially in the German speaking markets, we pushed like, hey, use this time to digitalize, use this time to make the changes which you didn't before. But now going into fall, winter, we can see that, you know, it's going to be a much tougher ride than expected. So for us, it was, again, staying close to our existing customers and then adapting to the situation. This is pretty much the last 6 months.
And let me ask you a quick follow-up. And knowing what you know now, if you knew this 6 months ago, would you have made a different pivot? Or was this the right move that you made, or would you have done something different?
I mean, yes, we would have done definitely a lot of things different, because it's always easier to have that strategic, know-how. For us, I think it was about communication. And so internal communication with the team, then also communication to your customers, you know, kind of VC and business angel backed company. It's also investor relations. So being able to, if we would have taken that different, we would have said from the beginning, okay, this is going to be hitting us. We can't look at 3 to 6 months targets. It needs to be directly shifted to 1 year, 2 year targets, and let's see things differently. Like this, we just lost a lot of time, I would say 3-4 months, where, you know, you're just adapting to the situations and you don't look at the big picture already. But now I would say that we managed quite well in being where we are today in comparison to where the market is.
Good. And Patrick, I mean, clearly your business probably benefited, I'm guessing, in some ways from the impact on other airlines, et cetera. But how did you guys have to shift and deal with the situation either positively or negatively?
That's correct. There's been pros and cons. Now in hindsight, the pros I think outweigh the cons, but mostly I believe we are in a business that's a little bit more mature than Florian. So we've had to adapt a bit differently, mostly in the sense that our product was already ready and in the market, and we mostly had to adapt on our side for our employees on how we were going to handle our workforce during this period. And in January, we doubled our size. So we went from 6 employees or 6 workers at SimplyJet to 12. At that time, of course, we didn't know what was coming. So of course, it was a big hit when in end of February, early March, most countries started to close their borders and stop traveling altogether. But for us, as we are, of course, in the private jet industry, it's much easier to adapt to these restrictions. We are not an airline who have to decide right now if we're going to cancel a flight in the next 3 or 4 months. Our flights can change from one day to the other. So we benefited from it in March because everybody wanted to go home. And so we did a lot of repatriation flights. Now, of course, end of March, mostly everybody was home. So for the months of April and May, it was very, very quiet. We had a few flights, the last ones, basically the people who were stranded and the really last ones who wanted to go home. But since countries have started to open their borders again around June, middle June, end of June, we've been able to get into it really fast again. And the point that Florian made before of having to be agile was the key to us here, because we had to keep everyone in the office for March, send everybody home for April and May, take everybody, initially half time in June. So everybody had to adapt. And these were people who, for the most of them, were not yet fully trained in what they were doing. So it was important to react very fast and very strongly to these events.
Oh.
Before we go to questions from our viewers, Demian, I want to ask both a question, because Florian, you said something really, really important a moment ago, that, and you're saying, and Patrick, you reinforced it, we didn't know how long this was going to last. I remember vividly where I was when ITB was cancelled, and I was in Paris on my way to ITB, and I was mortified thinking the tens of thousands that people like yourself spent on displays that suddenly we're sitting in a hall without people. We don't know how long this is going to last. So for a lot of people now comfortable in the discomfort zone of COVID-19, who've always thought, you know, I've got a really good idea. And as Demian said with his headline, the furlough schemes are coming to an end. A lot of people are going to be dealing with being let go. For people who have a sense of, I've always wanted to do this, what have I got to lose now? What's the first step? What's the first step you would recommend for anyone who feels now's the time to become an entrepreneur? Where should they apply their minds and their energy? Florian?
Yeah, I think it would be first evaluating what is the need there in a COVID, in this new era of problems, because it's important to see, okay, was it a problem before? But some problems got worse, and there's a lot of new problems which were created through COVID. So there's a lot of new opportunity, and I think it's an amazing time to create a new business, because you can directly take all of this data into account and say, okay, this is how I'm going to solve it, and this is why it's really current today. For companies, especially large companies, adapting to a scenario like this is much harder, because you need to rethink business models. It's an opportunity at this stage, and I would just say, take the time to talk to people. A lot of people have more time. They're at home, even though we're all in our Zoom calls all day and in our emails, but people are very responsive. So if you have a new idea, just write to the people who you think might want to buy this, and test it out. And from there on, see if you want to go for it.
Brilliant. Patrick?
I think Florian's point of talking to people is very important here, because I believe that at the moment we are in a state where opportunities rise, as Florian said as well. And definitely there's the need for new things. There's the need to adapt. We as entrepreneurs have the advantage compared to much larger companies of being able to switch or to adapt our products much faster, because there isn't this inertia that they have to change and adapt their products. So it's definitely a good time to think about starting a business. People have the time for different reasons to think about it, to put it in motion. So I would say that right now it is a good time, but you have to prepare much more than you did before, because it's more all or nothing. Good ideas are gonna soar much more than they did before, and bad ideas are just gonna get rejected right away. Whereas before, an idea that was maybe bad or average could survive for a bit, because people didn't need to be so decisive in what they consume, rather than now where the economy is a bit more hazardous or a bit more hesitant for people. They need to know that what they're spending their money on is important to them.
That's brilliant. Excellent. Shall we go to the viewers, Demian? Our Wizards of Oz are saying, stop being greedy. And that's to me, I think.
Do it. Sarah, any questions for us?
Yes, we have some questions that have come in here. So slightly linked to this, but Sven asks, on a more practical note, how do you structure your days at the very beginning of starting up a company?
Did you have any structure to your days when you started, or was it all ad hoc? I mean, how did you allocate your time? What did you divide up work, or the priorities? Patrick, we're going to start with you.
Yeah, I wouldn't say there was so much as a structure in our days, because as I mentioned before, the first step we took was to each work in order to save some money. And basically at the same time, we were building the idea of SimplyJet. So basically what that meant is that we had a full-time job, and in the evening we would meet either in person or on Skype, because one of my associates was in London at the time and working on whatever they're needed to do. So of course we had deadlines that were set, but these deadlines were always changing and adapting, because it was our first business. And let's be honest, we didn't really have any idea what we were doing. We didn't really know on the administrative side what needed to go first, what needed to come after. So of course there was a lot of inefficiency, but from that we learned, and if now we were to start another business, we could optimize. But I think it's a step that you have to go through. There's no way around it. You are gonna be facing complications on the administrative side, on obtaining information that you need, on permits or authorization, whatever. But it's gonna come, and I think you have to be ready to whatever you plan to do today. It can change at any time, and whatever comes up and is more urgent, you do it.
Yeah, makes sense to me.
Yeah.
Anything quick to add to that one, Florian, or should we jump to another question?
Yeah, from our side, yeah, we just came out of EHL, so we made ourselves a lot of early meetings just so that we feel as if we're working hard, because we had to make sure to tell everybody that we really want to do this. So this was, I think, the only funny part, that we actually tried to put more structure in, just so that we can be sure to ourselves that we actually are working on something and not just kind of gliding around. So it's important to set goals and deliverables.
Good. Sarah, another question?
Yes. So Steve, who is in the US, asked, both of you entered entrepreneurship with business partners. How have you handled the possible issue of one partner losing interest in the project or no longer wanting to contribute resources to the company?
Has that happened to either of you, or have you thought about that and created some system for being ready for that? Let's start with Florian real quick.
So no, it hasn't happened that somebody said, "Hey, we want to go." But of course, this is something which you need to talk about. Communication is key about that. Is setting expectations, and is also, when you're founding a company, you have agreements which you set up so that there's clear terms of what happens if somebody leaves and everything. And then when you get investors in, there's even more terms, and then there's even more things which you need to follow. But I think the key part is communication and being transparent, because from both sides, you want to build a successful business. If you're worried that the other person leaves, maybe you're not going to be as committed, or so it's always just talk about it.
Yeah. And Patrick?
Pretty much the same. Communication is very important. There's a lot of things that you don't necessarily want to talk about, such as someone wanting to leave the company, or maybe working less, or not having the time, not having the interest. But it is discussions that you need to have when you start, even maybe before starting, because this makes it much easier afterwards. And of course, there's high and lows. I wouldn't say any of me or my partners have completely lost motivation in the project at any point. But of course, there's high and lows sometimes where you really need to push through, and you don't see the end of it. But this is where it was especially important for us to be three in the beginning, because there's always someone who still is motivated, who's pushing the others when they're having maybe a bad time or a lack of energy or motivation. And it was, for us, definitely a plus to be three people rather than someone alone starting the business.
All right, Sarah, another question?
Yes, this is our last question, and it's from Jennifer, who asks, I have an idea for a business, but no experience starting one. What would you recommend for bridging that knowledge gap?
Patrick, save this person from a disaster.
No, I think the important part, definitely having the know-how on your product and on whatever you want to deliver is the most important part. And starting your business is almost a different job, and it's something that you need to learn. But there's a lot of resources outside that can help you. Anyway, you have to put your mind into it, and whenever you start, and this is the important part, is that you have to start doing it in order to realize whatever's coming to you, and the different administrative steps that are coming and everything, because I didn't have a clue either. We made some research before, of course, but there's so many things that are a bit hidden, not easily accessible, that are going to come, and you just do them as they come. It's just, it comes and you do it and you learn this way.
Brilliant. Can I ask you a quick last question, trick question to you both? You both came out of EHL. When you were at EHL, you presumably, aside from the dream of having Professor Hodari, which sadly you didn't have, for that dream job that you looked out to when you graduated, if suddenly that job came to you as an offer, would you accept it and give up entrepreneurship, or would you say no and stay, and why? Patrick.
Definitely not. I mean, I didn't have so much as a dream job when I left EHL, and I think I really grew into this this job of being an entrepreneur. When I wouldn't have said it when I finished EHL, but with hindsight now, I would definitely say that my dream job was to be an entrepreneur and having my own business. So no, I would say no.
Florian?
Definitely, I would also say no, but I would also say it depends at what time of the company and the building. It would be too easy to just say, hey, no. I would always have been fully committed, because we took also a couple years in developing the business, but yeah, stand of today, I would definitely say no, and because I see the opportunity, I see what we're working on, and it's just fun, to be able to have this kind of, as you say, adrenaline every day, the challenges where you're able to solve them yourselves or in a small team. So I think there's not a lot of jobs which I would think of today where I think I could have the same kind of mindset or day-to-day. So I would say no.
And it's interesting, part of me thinks that this is why you both are beautiful in terms of your entrepreneurial muscles. Because the fact is, everyone, whether they're in jobs or not in jobs, is facing uncertainty. But at the heart of being an entrepreneur is being responsive to uncertainty. So it's been a joy speaking to you. Do you want to do the sign-off, Demian?
Yeah, I mean, like I told the guys before, I was not their professor, which probably explains a lot of their success. But I do take pride in the fact that EHL graduates are flexible, they seize opportunity, they're courageous. It's not an easy thing to do to start your own business. It's not an easy thing to do to keep your business going in times like this. And so, it's very satisfying to see people finding ways to do this in the industry. And I think there's a lot of people out there who watch the show and who don't watch the show, or in the industry, who have lost jobs or lost confidence, but have ideas. And hopefully you've given them some encouragement, if not to start their business, at least to explore the idea of doing it and finding some partners and playing around with the idea. Now's the time to look at that. I'm sure there's going to be some incredibly new successful ventures that come out of all this chaos right now. And I wish people good luck, and I wish you guys great success with your firms, and look forward to seeing how they develop over the next year or two. So good luck. Thanks for being here.
Thank you both.
Thank you very much. Thank you for having us.
Thanks. Take care. Demian Hodari, brilliant job in getting two brilliant guests. They were really stunning. And I love how, in the spirit of this time, people are very generous in sharing their own experience and their insight. That's really quite special. So thank you for that. Twice.
My pleasure.
And we move on into our inbox. Any questions that we have?
Sarah, any questions for Anita or myself? If not, I've got one for Anita.
Ooh.
You can go ahead with your question.
No, Sarah, don't let him.
No, my question was, you got at this a little bit before, right? You are entrepreneurial. I've got a business. I've had some businesses before, some that went well, some that went poor. What lesson have you learned from all this about running your business?
It's interesting.
Think is valuable for people?
I set up, when I started my business 18 years ago, I don't think entrepreneur is a title that we give ourselves. We create something, and as a result, we're entrepreneurial. But I had two rules when I started my business 18 years ago, and I stick to them to this day, and they've served me well. A, this is my vocation, not my profession. And B, I will only work with clients that I love. And both of those have yielded my best work, my most creative work, and my strongest, longest clients. Because for me, at least, the money is not the motivation. If I'm doing it right, I can feed myself and my team. But I love my work. I love what I do. And that's where RISE is within that, and why approaching you. Those rules have worked, and they feed the stamina required when things are tough as well.
All right. So there's no other questions, Sarah. We will move on.
Lovely. This is my favorite part, aside from every other moment of RISE. So, concerns and confidences, Professor Hodari, in your lovely tie.
Okay, I'm never wearing a tie again. And if I had thought I was wearing the tie on the show, I would have worn a different one. I guess I'm concerned. I want people to take the risk and start their own businesses now, or explore them, especially if, what have you got to lose, right? If you've lost a job, if you're furloughed, if you're unemployed, if your industry is in chaos, now's the time. And I know it's risky and it's scary, and you may think this is the worst possible time to do it, but I think, I'm concerned people just won't spend the time and have those conversations with people, talk to potential investor, talk to a potential partner, clients who might buy your product, and see what they have to say. And I just hope people haven't lost faith in the industry, and thus lost faith in themselves and their ability to make a difference, because I think there's so many talented people out there, and those two guys are examples. And I'm concerned people won't seize the opportunity that they should.
It's a really, really good point. And my confidence and my hope is that people take light of what, for instance, Florian said about the new needs that are coming out of this time that we're all experiencing in our own adjustment to life. That can be a really powerful seed. And as Patrick said, it's more all or nothing now. It is what does one have to lose? And I think we're in a world right now where people are much more confident about caring for and watching out for each other. And that might be exactly what's needed. So I'm confident our viewers are smart enough to make the smart decisions for themselves, and not wait for the world to open up again, because that's a long way off to go. So very interesting itself. What I do have enormous confidence in is one special person who sadly is leaving us at the end of this month, but who has been an incredible part of the RISE team, and that's our dear Katja, our EHL graduate who became an AMNA team member and the heartbeat behind all the social media for RISE, keeping us all going, keeping you and me, Demian, younger in terms of figuring out the whole world of social media, especially Instagram. But Katja, we are so grateful to you. You are now out of South Africa, back in the UK. You've done the flight back, and you've got a whole new flight ahead of you. So from all of us at RISE, a huge loving thanks to you and to Demian for introducing me to Katja in the first place through EHL, which is very special. So a special yay, Katja, as she ventures out at the 1st of October.
Thank you, Katja.
Sorry.
We've got, as people know, we're doing these live episodes every other week, and in alternate weeks we have shorter, more practical episodes with just some experts who have great advice and just answer a few key questions and just give you, truthful, honest advice. Last time was about travel insurance, and next time linked to this idea of entrepreneurship is, let's get it started. How do we raise money? How do we get investors to back us on business ideas? And maybe, do you want to say something about our guest next week?
Indeed. We've got a great, great guest who comes from our industry. She's from Singapore Tourism Board. And interestingly, unusually, the Tourism Board is actually encouraging creators, innovators, entrepreneurs to approach Singapore Tourism Board so they can look at how they can actually take that idea and bring it to life alongside those young innovators. So it'll be very exciting and great to get an Asian perspective. What I also love about this, Demian, is the fact that we listened to our viewers over the holiday. They told us what they wanted to see. They wanted more practical stuff and direction. Hence our great executives and residents today. Hence Robin talking about insurance. And hence this next in practice session, which, like all of the episodes, will always be available for you on www.rise-weekly.com. So please do check into those any day, anytime, anywhere. We are at your service as always. So I will, from my side, before I hand over to Demian, as always, a special thank you to our Wizards of Oz who make all the magic happen for us. We have an incredible production team. We're very blessed for them. Thank you as always to you, Demian. Again, Katya, thank you. And to everyone who has been watching, thank you for being with us for season 1 into season 2, going live, going in practice. As always, from my side, stay safe, stay strong, stay hopeful, keep your hands clean. We'll see you live in 2 weeks' time on the 12th. Sorry, I'm terrible at math. And we'll see you in practice on the 5th of October. Over to you for the close, sir.
Yeah, I just want to give a big shout out to everybody who works in our public relations team. They do a great job. I don't know how with so few people they can get so much done for us. So thank you to that PR team. And it's been really a lot of fun having this episode. I got to go back and teach now. And I hopefully none of my students are watching this because they should all be in class. I'll see everybody here in 2 weeks on the 12th of October. And thank you very much. Anita, take care.
Excellent. Take care, everyone.